Damien. Let me see if it comes up at all. Well, it's initializing live stream. Anyway, everything seems to be kind of okay so far, so good. Anyway, so the reason we decided to turn on the live stream is so that people, because we have a very visual thing here with Damien, and I'm just waiting for the thing to start. There we go. It's on. There we go. In fact, let me change us to a different mix here. In fact, let me put it full screen, and let me also turn the sound off on this deal here.
Yeah, I can hear that.
So it's not coming back at us. There we go. Wait a minute. Here, there we go. Now everything's just fine. Now, show them the cat, Damien. This is so people who, if you go to
Frankie.
Huh?
Yeah, this is Frankie.
Yeah, yeah.
Also known as Princess.
Okay, now let me for the radio audience describe Frankie. Just another cat. Okay, now let's get to the next one. You know.
All right, that was the big visual.
Well, wait a minute. You got the cat in back of you.
Well, yeah, that's Virgil, and I don't want to disturb Virgil.
Why does Virgil bite or anything?
No. Okay, fine. I'll disturb Virgil just for the sake of.
I love waking cats up because they get so pissed.
Here we go. No. Virgil's a good kitty. He's not going to get pissed.
And now this is not yours either, right?
No. This is hers.
Now, do you feel you have to say you like those cats just because you love her?
No, I actually do honestly love these cats.
Yeah,
they are so awesome.
And Virgil, I might add, just to let the audience know who isn't watching this, that Virgil is again just another cat.
Yes. Okay, there you go.
I'm
sorry, Virgil. I know your mom might be listening at some point, but I'm sorry.
Yeah. And now they'll be on for posterity as well. So
that's right.
That's pretty good. How are you doing this evening? Rob, how are you?
I'm great. How about you?
Here's Rob. Rob is, we kind of call him the voice of Gabnet now, because that's really what you are. You're like you know what it is? You're like the fourth Marx brother. So people will know what I'm trying to say here.
The imaging, the branding.
Huh? He's like
branding.
Actually, he's like the fifth Marx brother. Anybody know the name of the fifth Marx brother?
Gummo.
Wait a minute. How many?
Yeah, there was Zeppo and then Gummo.
Yeah, absolutely. Rick Horn, Gummo. Gummo actually never made it to the movies. Gummo was on in the group before they became movie stars. When they went to the movies, they dropped Gummo, or maybe he dropped them. It could be he didn't want to do it. And they had it was Harpo and there was Groucho and Chico, not Chico,
right.
Chico. And because he was named because he chased the chicks. All right. And then there was who did I leave out? Zeppo. And Zeppo was he was a pretty good looking guy, and he always kind of in the stage act he was very funny and very much of a comedian. But when they went to the movies, they made him the romantic interest.
They said Zeppo was the funniest of the brothers.
Really?
Yep.
The funniest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I always felt that I never knew why his reason for existence in that group, because he just didn't seem to fit. You know what happened also with the Three Stooges? It seems as though Curly was a good-looking guy. He was the best-looking guy out of the bunch, and they made him shave his head and put on some few pounds, and he became like this buffoon. But basically, he was the chick magnet.
And he resented
that
over that for his entire life.
What?
He resented having to play that role for his entire life.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that he was made to look like a goofball. Although he was funny as hell.
Well, can I be honest about it?
I know you don't like him. It's okay.
This is as bad as what I'm saying about cats and dogs. People are going to hate me forever with this. But my problem with the Marx with the Three Stooges is I never really liked them that much. You know, I never thought they were that terrific. They never made me laugh. And I guess as a kid, as a boy, I should like the Three Stooges because it's silly guy humor, isn't it?
Yeah,
Pretty much.
absolutely.
And I
Well,
think
no,
without Curly, they
you-
weren't that funny. It was
Well,
Curly to
you
me
in
is the one who really
particular-
made them what they were.
Really? Yeah. Curly, I can understand that. I mean, when I've seen the act, Curly made sense that way. That he was kind of funny.
He just visually, he was funny. He
Yeah.
made great noises, and it just, I mean, to me, he just had all the talent in that group.
Yeah. But
I think-
Damien's raising his hand. He's got something to say because this is the most controversial issue we've hit in a long time.
No, I think that I wonder if it's. I never liked the Three Stooges. There was never anything I could see that was appealing, but I could see why it may have been appealing at the time that it was released. Now I'm clearly a lot younger, so I don't actually know, but maybe it's
Hi, Alex.
Alex is turning the lights up, I guess.
Alex?
Yeah, I just want to turn
Okay.
I wanted to turn the light up.
Alex has returned.
Well, you see,
Here we go.
I put in this light over in the corner, one of these quartz lamps, so
We didn't know
so
how
that
long you
so
were
I would
gonna
look
be
better,
gone.
and I didn't realize.
Left.
Oh, I guess I'm the host now.
I was
All right.
gonna sneak the video on and not tell you that it was going on at some point during the show, and so I'd forgotten to turn the light on, but because I don't like this fluorescent, makes me look like I'm being interrogated. But anyway, go ahead with.
I was only saying that I never liked the Three Stooges at all, but it was never my generation's type of humor.
Okay,
the
so
whole hitting on
who-
the head with the hammer thing.
So who did you like?
When I was a little kid,
Yeah.
we had a totally different type of humor. I liked Abbott and Costello. Those guys were funny, but even they were a little outdated by the time I was a little kid.
Entertainment reporter Maggie
What
Pahanik
is
is joining me
that?
for a primer on the most promising new shows, and thank goodness we've seen
It must be
television.
something of yours, Alex.
It's one of mine,
Yeah,
and I got to
one of
figure
yours.
out which one it is. I bet it's always. I'll tell you. There it is. It's always raw.
That's
It's always
some
raw
kind of a
story.
breaking news report
It's
or
always
something.
raw story. Raw story will suddenly start playing something without telling you.
Well, you were talking the other night about the advantages to having multiple monitors, and this is the disadvantage to having multiple monitors is now you have to scan across.
I've got three
all of these different monitors. Where the hell is it? Oh
Well,
my
no,
god!
I know now. Just like I used to know if there was noise on the line going on, it was Doug. Now I know that whenever there's something like that suddenly happens, it's raw story. So if I just I think I'm going to take it off my tabs just so it never comes up. But anyway, I'll tell you when I was a kid, I liked the Marx Brothers. I guess I always liked the Marx Brothers because it was intellectual humor. I mean, they were the toast of New York society. They loved the Marx Brothers and their humor and their jokes and the way in which they did their skits and their sketches. And so I always liked the Marx Brothers. I always liked the intelligence of how they sounded. And huh? Who's that? Oh, now what is that happening? Huh? Sometimes we just get feedback and it happens. Now it goes away. Okay. I learned how to solve that problem. What's interesting about this whole process is, oh no.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Disaster.
Talk among each other, will you guys? This is not the night for me.
Well, I always liked the Three Stooges, and I was introduced to them really, and earnestly. I was introduced to them when I was in college, and also while I was smoking lots of marijuana. So that really enhanced the whole Three Stooges experience for me.
Yeah.
And since then, I've loved them, and it's just such lowbrow and so stupid. It's just hilarious because it's so idiotic.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do my lowbrow and stupid curly?
Your lowbrow.
Certainly.
Okay, I don't know if it's gonna be good. Hold on. Certainly.
exceedingly.
Now, usually girls can't do that, so I'm impressed.
Of course,
And
Usually that's what guys do.
The
Guys always
unsung
want
hero
to.
of the Stooges was Larry Fine. I always thought because he didn't say much, but when he said anything, he said was like golden because he like say the best stuff for him.
Well, in some ways, my favorite Stooge was Larry Fine.
Yeah.
And I don't know why exactly, but he just didn't seem to be as stupid as the rest. I mean, I hated Moe. Moe had no other comedic thing than to hit somebody in the face with something.
I like Shemp.
You like Shemp?
Really?
Because he had a career
Mm-hmm.
for the Stooges.
Yeah.
The man was able to hold his own against W.C. Fields. He played Damon Runyon in a very obscure movie, and you look at the roles he had, the Stooges is just one more thing he had to do.
And he didn't really want that. It's when Curly got sick, he was sort of drafted into it.
Well, no, it was helping out his family,
Right.
which, but you look at what he's done.
But that was later on. That was after Curly died that he went back and worked.
Before
the
he
Stooges.
died, he as soon as he got sick. In fact, there's one of the shorts. Curly plays. Curly has after he's sick and he doesn't have a speaking part, but they brought him back to do like a cameo role.
Yeah.
Hold That Lion. That's what it was called, 1947.
What's it called?
Right.
Hold That Lion, I think.
Yeah.
And it was the last appearance of. And he had a full set of hair.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, he had his hair grown out.
Well, usually when you're dying of something, don't you lose your hair? By the way, for people who just tuned in and are looking at this on the TV, what Alex has been doing has been cleaning up his desk because he just spilled almost half a bottle of Starbucks iced coffee all over his desk. But thank God I keep these paper towels around for when I get swamp ass. So,
You didn't get any equipment, did you?
No, and if I did, so what? It got under here.
We lost Patrick.
We lost Patrick. Oh, how did we lose Patrick? Well, he's coming back. He knows how to immediately call back. Here we go. Hello, Patrick. You having problems tonight?
I'm guessing the NSA got me.
Well, it could also be the coffee here having spilled.
That's what you get for having Cobra Commander as your avatar.
Shh.
That isn't Cobra Commander as his avatar, is it?
Yes, it is.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, it is.
Can you for a moment?
Cobra!
There we go. Wait a minute. There it is. There's Cobra Commander. Oh, that is Cobra Commander. See, well, wait a minute. But that looked to me for a while like it was, who was it in Star Wars? Boba Fett?
Well, I had Boba Fett up before.
Yeah.
This is Cobra Commander, and I
Commander.
updated his uniforms.
God, I'm getting old. When the day comes,
You're old. I'm 44. I didn't even know that was Cobra Commander. I never paid attention to stupid G.I. Joe.
No, Dan 44 is too old. You have to be 5 years younger.
really?
Get it?
Son of a
Yeah.
bitch.
I was into.
And I've
like,
noticed that people who are less than 5 years younger than me don't get it either.
Yeah.
You know
And there
what?
was, in the old days, they used to have like the taller GI Joes when they were when it was like a regular realistic thing and not the sci-fi.
Back when it was a doll and not an action figure.
Oh,
This is
whatever.
down.
But they tall and they had real hair, and then they got dinky and had plastic hair, and then it got those.
And you had a brush that came with it, right? In their mess kit that you brush their hair, right?
God, I feel so left out of this conversation.
Well, you
But G.I. Joe's,
God, I'm trying to think. What toys did I play with? I think it was like a tin can and a string.
Jax.
Jack, yeah.
Well, let me see here. What did I have any favorite like toys or anything? We didn't have like GI Joes and things like that. There were none of those action figures. I don't think those came along till what, the 50s or 60s maybe.
60s,
G.I. Joe, I think, was 60s.
Yeah, I had those stationary little soldiers that, in one position, and that was
Well,
it.
I think
We used to melt those.
The first
You too? Okay.
wait a minute. The first action doll was Barbie. I know she wasn't supposed to be.
That's true.
I learned about the backseat of cars with Barbie.
Actually, if you look at the history of Barbie, it started out as a German.
It was a German.
Fashion doll.
It wasn't. Well, no, it wasn't even a fashion doll.
Exactly, and it was sold.
No,
in
it was sold as a
tobacco
sex
stores.
doll. As a sex doll.
Yeah,
And it was sold in sex shops. And it was she was just supposed to be an attractive doll. And the woman who I guess brought the Barbie to America literally took that doll, kind of desexized her, and she became Barbie. And so, and I guess I don't know if the one in Europe had genitalia, but I would imagine it did.
So it was the original real doll.
Yes, yes.
miniature.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about those. Yeah.
But when I was a kid, I don't think we ever had action. There weren't any action figures. I can't even remember what I had. What did I have as toys? What were my favorite
ball?
toys? Yeah,
A ball?
A ball. And I fought for it with my cat. I mean, it was-
A paddle ball, right? Paddle ball.
Yeah, well, you have one of those paddle balls, but you mean the thing like was in House of Wax. Do you know what I'm talking about? Patrick seems to know what I'm talking about. And it was a paddle ball. It had a piece of rubber band on it and a ball in the end of the rubber band. The other part of the rubber band was attached to this paddle, and you boom, 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 boom,
Yeah,
and I could never get that damn thing to work.
I'd hit myself in the head all the
I
time.
did eventually get it to work in my 20s.
Yeah.
And I can actually do it for about 28.
Wait a
I
minute.
think so. That's my record.
I think we may find some talent Charlene has that we never knew she had.
No, I had one of those when I was a kid, and it really was bad when the staple that held the rubber band broke and the whole thing fell
Well, the
apart.
rubber band broke. I mean, they didn't last but 5 minutes, those damn things. And they never sent you like a staple gun and another piece of elastic string or anything. You had to go out and buy another one of these things. And I think I remember the name of them. They were the brand. And here's the reason I remember it. It was called Bolo. And,
of course you would remember that.
And of course I would remember it because
That's why you're Bolo.
that was my nickname when I was a kid. No, I wasn't named after a paddle ball.
Oh.
So you say.
Sell
Yeah.
for a fortune. Oh,
Oh
look
my
at this.
God,
There's
you
Mr.
got it.
Machine. Oh my God, that's awesome.
I love that.
Yeah.
Is that the original or is that the 70s version?
This is the 70s. This was given to me for my 21st birthday.
The 70s version is plastic. The 60s version has a metal key on the back.
And you can take the whole thing apart. I know.
Yes,
This is,
took it all apart.
but yeah, when you
Wow.
see Mr. Machine, I was like, oh boy.
I had the
That's
plastic
cool.
version. My granddad had the metal version.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a granddad, but I had the metal version.
Yeah.
I had the original wood version of Lincoln Logs. Anybody have those?
Sure, I had
yeah.
Lincoln
Definitely.
Logs.
They're still wood, I think.
No, I thought they started making them out of
Made of
plastic. I
plastic.
don't know.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Boy, I had such a
Back, don't it?
I had such a
They're not
deprived
really logs if they're not wood, right?
I had such a deprived childhood because I'm not in any way remembering any kind of toy that I had that I somehow became attached to.
Anybody remember the name of the toy that you would build these shapes, these things with, and they had these round things with all the holes in it, and you had these
Spirograph?
sticks.
Oh.
No,
it was a panel
Tinker
girder
toy.
and panels or something.
no.
Tinker
Tinker Toys, I think. Tinker
Oh,
Toys.
Tinker, yeah,
Toys,
they were
yeah.
Tinker
Yeah.
toys, right?
Yeah, Costco brings them back about every Christmas time in a really big tub.
Really?
Well,
Yeah.
no, wait a minute,
I
wait
had
a
a
minute,
whole
wait a
bunch
minute.
of
Hold on a second. You just got me. That was one of my toys that I loved.
Tinker Toy.
Tinker Toys.
Yes.
And that goes back into the 40s, folks, at least.
And erector sets.
Yeah.
How about Cootie?
Which, think about erector sets. You give these things to
Oh,
kids, they
erector
would never
sets.
do it today. They were metal, all these little
Yeah.
pieces that kids could swallow. You can get
Short
cut on
edges.
these pieces.
And nuts and bolts and things like that. But I never cut myself, never swallowed another
Yeah.
bolt.
Yeah.
No,
You know,
neither
and-
did I.
And
That's why I always think that what we're raising today are kids who are just going to be hampered a little bit because you don't really, we shelter kids from everything today. It's like there's no common sense.
No, I'll give you actually a perfect example is the game Cootie. I don't know if you remember the game Cootie, where you assemble this Cootie out of different pieces.
Yeah.
I had this version of Cootie where the Cootie itself was about this big, and it came in different really large pieces for my generation. And then I played my granddad's version of Cootie, which was a Cootie about this big. And it came in these teeny tiny little pieces. But for some reason, they trusted my granddad's generation to not swallow everything and choke themselves. But they didn't trust my generation at all.
Okay, Patrick?
I had a rocking horse that was on a metal frame with metal springs
Yes.
that a kid could put their fingers in. And I used to rock back and forth on
Right.
the thing. And I'm sure I got my fingers caught in the springs, but I'm still here. I got all my digits, you know. But I see these things on eBay, and I think nowadays they would be banned. And, you know, I still remember sitting on this damn horse, and you go back and forth, and the springs are squeaking. And if another kid would have put their finger in there, or even you, I mean, it. And of course, I had toy guns, and they would shoot things, and you know, hell, I used to set up tripwire in the backyard.
Does anybody remember the I got this a couple of times as a kid. It was a kit that you would get, and there was a piece of wood or something in there, and you got this hot iron that you would burn.
It was like cork in there.
Well, there was a wood. There were wood burning kits, which I never. As a kid, I loved my wood burning kit, but I couldn't figure out what the hell exactly was I doing with it. I mean,
exactly.
what kind of
actually no point at all.
What kind of artistic
burn your initials in this stuff?
But what kind of artistic statement were you making by doing that? It just made no sense to me at all. Because they would have give you a piece of wood, and it would have like a picture in it, and then you would have to outline it burning the wood. And then when you were through, you had this burnt picture.
I still remember that smell. Burning smell.
The wood burning smell.
The wood burning smell. Yeah. Well, of course.
It's good. I liked it.
And also, I remember.
Oh yeah, creepy crawlers.
Credible edibles, creepy crawlers. Yeah.
But I also remember, folks, many burns on my fingers from my wood burning set.
Yeah, exactly. And we would give that to kids today.
And you know that whole theory that if a kid let a kid hit touch the stove so he burns himself so he'll never do it again. I still kept playing with that damn wood burning kit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now when I was a kid, also there was one other thing. Nobody had anything against what I'm about to tell you. I was one of my favorite people on television, and I've got to tell you, if you've never seen the guy, he was one of the nicest, had one of the nicest, warmest personalities of any kid's TV personality. And his name was William Boyd, or as he was known to the public, Hopalong Cassidy. And what had happened during I think the 30s and 40s, he had made all these films, these Hopalong Cassidy films. Where how many here remember Hopalong Cassidy? Anybody? Oh, okay. So okay. Rob's the child in the group.
Yeah, I don't remember him.
Yeah. Anyway,
I mean, I know of him, but
Hopalong Cassidy.
Yeah, I know of him. Me too.
Oh, Hopalong Cassidy. He made these films. And my father, in fact, had worked with him in a movie when my father was an extra. It was called The Volga Boatman, and he was a big silent star. And he started doing these Hopalong Cassidy films and became very popular doing them. They were a Saturday morning staple. Well, he may have turned out to be the smartest guy ever in the history of Hollywood. Because what he did was after, when television came in, he went back to the studios and said, "You don't need these things. I'll buy them for you." And he bought them for pennies on the dollar. All the films, all the Hopalong Cassidy films. And he released them all to TV, which I mentioned earlier, like to do stuff on the cheap. And so he was offering these films. And Hopalong Cassidy became a national sensation. I mean, he had been a minor cowboy hero in the movies, but when television came, Hopalong Cassidy was just the biggest thing in all of television. And then he started his own show where he was producing new episodes of Hopalong Cassidy. And along with it, if you ever saw William Boyd, he had just this absolutely, how can I call it, wonderful personality. He was just warm. He had a very warm laugh and everything. And so I was a big Hopalong Cassidy fan. And they were having this Hopalong Cassidy show at some theater, I think at the War Memorial Veterans Opera House or whatever. No, the War Memorial Theater, that was it. And so I went to it. And the only thing I ever won in my life is they had this drawing. And the only thing I've ever won in my life was a gun and holster set, 2 guns in a holster, Hopalong Cassidy. The only thing I ever won. So I was walking around the neighborhood with my 2 guns, you know. Of course, they were cap guns. You know, they wouldn't kill anybody. But today, if some parent gave their kid a Hopalong Cassidy gun and holster set, they'd be charged with child abuse or something.
Some cop would probably shoot him.
Yeah.
You know, and the weird thing about that is we can't get people to decide that they don't want guns in their lives, but they don't want to give them to the kids.
Yeah, but when I was a kid,
toy guns.
Yeah, but when I was a kid, we never thought of them as real guns.
Right.
They were things that you pointed and they went bang. Right.
That was my generation, you know. It was. Yeah. I think it was actually laser tag that really did it, because it was the little kid that was playing laser tag, the original World of Wonder laser tag, which had this big, real black gun, which I actually have a copy of, or a real laser tag gun of. But he was crouching around, and a cop shot him full in the chest with a shotgun because this kid was creeping around in the bushes with a black gun. And that's what really sparked the whole toy gun controversy, and why no kid can walk around with a toy gun anymore.
Well, I think we have in many ways. What's the word I'm looking for? We've sanitized our kids. Right. You know.
I'm not even allowed to sell a toy gun on eBay unless it has an orange tip to signify to dumbasses that this is a toy gun, so that, you know, people don't sue me because they think they're buying a real gun. I mean, that's how extreme it's got.
Wait a minute, Patrick, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when my ex and I first got together, when I met her kids, one of the first things that I bought for the kids was a lightsaber set and a gun set for each of the kids. And to her credit, you know, she raised the kids to play much the same way as I did, where, you know, they played with Nerf guns and things like that. And, you know, I actually had like a childhood outside, and I imagine they still do the same thing. So to me, that's kind of rare nowadays. You know, everybody's inside playing video games, or, you know, we're sanitizing them not to play with guns or anything like that, or swords, like lightsabers, because we want an anti-violent thing. But what much the same as, you know, the other, when I was a kid, I didn't really think of them as real guns. You know, I mean, we were playing.
Yeah.
And I knew the difference between them. So
yeah. I grew up in the 60s, and a lot of the television shows were Army shows, combat and such. And we all had guns, and we used to play Army. You'd hide, and then, you know, you shoot, you're dead, I killed you, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, all war and things were glorified in those days. The problem was, you know, I think back, and I grew up as a kid thinking, you know, this was really cool to be in the Army and go kill people.
Yeah, but you know something?
You know,
I'm going to disagree with all of you here. I don't think when I was growing up as a kid, and I used to like to play war like the rest of the kids, you know, and I used to like to play cowboys and, yes, Indians, just like the rest of the kids. But I never for one moment thought of them as any kind of game that was violent, because I knew nobody was getting killed. It was really a sophisticated role-playing version of hide and seek.
Right.
You know,
that's true.
Tag.
Yeah, but when you're a kid, you really don't understand death, you know, the reality of death. and it creates a false sense of what war is, the way things were glorified. And then, I came of age and, Vietnam was going on. And all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, this is for real. And people are being, destroyed. Their lives are being ruined. And it's, I don't know.
But was that consciousness of suddenly that this is a horrible thing and war is a horrible thing and people get killed in wars, was that not something we kind of inflicted on our children? That the children didn't look upon it that way. I mean, look at me. I grew up in a generation where we went to a Saturday matinee every Saturday, and there was, at least in the feature, one person shooting up another person, right? And there was a serial where there were people shooting each other. And then I would watch the cartoon, and Bugs Bunny would be blowing up Japs, and I saw all these war movies with John Wayne, and I played war with my friends. And yet I grew up hating war, not liking violence, hating the concept of violence, and nobody even had to teach me that. So I don't think any of these things encourage kids to become anything. I think kids are smarter than that.
I think
I agree.
Actually, we were taught that, Alex. We were taught that guns are bad and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we were taught that by the role models. Like, am I breaking up?
No,
I think it seems everybody's breaking up a little bit.
You're not breaking up here. So
okay, we all grew up with these role models like John Wayne, and for me, my big role models were Captain Kirk and this ages me, but Optimus Prime was a big role model for me because they were always going for the good, and no matter what, they were for the good. And yeah, guns were bad, but sometimes they were necessary. But for the most part, I had a very good role model. We were exposed to violence a lot on TV, but we were also exposed to a lot of really good role models, as fantasy-based as they might have been.
All right. Okay. That sounds all well and good. And one of the things about Star Trek that always was a first, really, is that it was the first time in science fiction that a hopeful future was being portrayed. Up until then, most science fiction was horrible futures and people causing all kinds of problems and how terrible.
Or ridiculous, unbelievable futures.
Yeah, yeah. So that was what was so great about Star Trek. And that's nice and that's good. All I'm saying is, don't we underestimate kids? That kids are not going to be influenced by playing with a toy gun. They're not going to grow up and suddenly become a mass murderer.
But that's the issue today, is that you took away the toy guns and you gave them these really violent video games where they go into these worlds of violence.
All right, let me stop you there. Okay, I play those games. All right,
Me too.
I play those games all the time. I love nothing more. I started out with Tomb Raider. I love Tomb Raider, even when you could see the seams in her legs, because I used to like to be able to get her on all fours. Okay, and then I moved on to, what is it? The war game, the big war game that we have now. Oh God,
Call of Duty?
Huh?
Call of Duty.
Call of Duty?
Call of Duty. Love Call of Duty. Now, I'm the most non-violent human being you will ever meet. Okay, the concept of violence, I'm abhorrent to it, but I'm just killing pixels there. I'm practicing skill of trying to accomplish something and get somewhere, and I love those games. I enjoy the hell out of them, but it doesn't turn me into a mass murderer tomorrow. What turns you into a mass murderer tomorrow is you've got to screw loose in the first place, and no video game is going to encourage you to do it. You might play the video game because it's what you want to do, but the fact of the matter is, when push comes to shove, come on,
it's like testosterone. You got to get your man out kind of thing.
Patrick.
Yeah, I was just gonna point it out that I don't personally play video games, and my heroes were Darth Vader, Cobra Commander, Megatron. They were all the bad guys. But
all the bad guys,
okay, and like you said with the video games, I don't think that makes a bit of difference as long as you don't have that screw loose. And I really do believe a lot of people that are mass murderers and serial killers, they were predisposed to do that anyway, just by something on their DNA. There was something off on it. I mean, like I said, I've, Damien was big into Optimus Prime. I love Megatron. I was Cobra Commander. I was Darth Vader.
Patrick, how old were you when you're into all these things?
What's that?
How old were you when you were into all these things? Or are you still into them? But I mean, when did you start?
Let's see. I would have been about anywhere between 6 and 12.
Okay.
Yeah,
The reason
Patrick, I believe, is
ask,
5 years younger than me.
the reason I ask is because there are some studies out there that say that kids who get exposed to these violent games too young can actually wind up, they get their heads spun around, and it affects their brains. And that's how there was I know
But
that
something though, Rob, is that we can say that, and perhaps that's what science is saying at the moment. But next week it'll say something else.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Next week they'll say, those games were really pretty good at desensitizing people to violence, and they don't want to commit it. I mean,
there was a Law and Order episode. My wife watches SVU all the time. I'd never seen it, and where they had these copycat murders, and they determined that it was these teenagers, young teenagers, who they got so addicted to video games they didn't even want to sleep together. These kids, all they did was play video games, and they wound up killing people by the drive-bys, the way it was happening in this particular video game. And I know that they base a lot of their episodes on not necessarily
from the headlines.
Yeah. So,
I mean, let's be honest. What causes the most violence in our societies? Probably
Politicians.
Huh?
Politicians.
Politicians. Yeah. I mean,
I
but
would say
what?
poverty too.
What?
poverty.
I would say poverty.
Poverty. Not
Yeah.
a good
Yeah,
answer.
Desperation.
But I don't think. And if you're poor, you can't afford a $59 video game. That's for damn sure. So I just don't know that I think maybe we just sanitize our kids too much. Maybe it's that sanitization that in fact it does cause violence, that it bubbles up in almost every kid in some way, and he has no way to express it. But if he had a video game, he could express it. Or if he had cowboys and Indians, he could express it. Or if he had a war game, he could express it. I mean, could it be the sanitization of our society that's causing a lot of the violence?
Could be. It's a taboo kind of thing, right? I always hold true to the fact that when I was a kid, I grew up in a family that my grandfather owned a liquor store in Queens. And as a kid, we would go there for the holidays because he was open till 11 o'clock at night. And they were never shy about giving me a little drink when everybody was having we would take sips, or they would give us a small little glass. So when everybody around me at 16, 15 were going out and, hey, we're going to get beer tonight, it was no big deal to me. It was really no big deal. I didn't feel like I had to do that.
Well, my father, when I was a kid, my father said to me, listen, son, if you ever want a drink, don't go out with your friends and have one. Just come to me, and I'll go to the liquor cabinet, and I'll pour you a stiff one. He said, and for that reason, to this day, I'm not a drinker.
It's all part of
I grew up with it also.
So it was the opposite of sanitizing. It was actually rubbing my nose in it and saying, do you want this? And me going, well, to begin with, years ago, we had Nancy Reagan running around the country going, just say no to drugs, just say no to drugs. Well, when you got some addle-pated bitch like this, who's higher than a kite herself on every prescription medicine known to mankind, running around going, just say no to drugs, just say no to drugs, you almost have to turn around and say to yourself, I'm going to use drugs because I don't want to be like her. I mean, when a parent tells you don't do something, you want to do it. So the best thing to do is she should have been going around saying, hey, somebody wants to offer you some drugs, try it and see. It's not very good. Boy, would that change. Or, hey, Nancy Reagan says, go out and get loaded. The kids wouldn't get loaded because they didn't want to be like Nancy Reagan.
Well, then Betty Ford should have been that one and said, hey, be like me. and then nobody would have drank.
Exactly. But I mean, I just think that our psychology and how we handle these things are all wrong. To be honest with you, I think. But getting back to the toys, how many toys when you were kids could put your eyes out?
All of them.
All of them.
All of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
Alex, can I cut in real quick?
Yeah.
I have to sign off because it's my time. So I would like to say thank you very much, everyone.
Oh, it's
And
been a
I have
pleasure
to- I
having
have
you
to cut
here,
out here.
Damon.
Night.
And come see us again.
I will indeed.
And
Thank you.
bring
Good
the
night,
cat, bring the
everyone.
cat,
Damien.
bring the
Thanks,
cats
bring the
along
cats.
as well. Anyway, back to what we were saying. So how much do we sanitize this world? And are we actually handing our kids a bad legacy by being too sanitary?
There's a definite case to be made for that because since the sanitization, it's gotten worse, right?
Well, I mean, obviously,
Has it, or are we just more aware of everything?
It kind of reminds me of the history of polio. In that they never could quite figure out where polio came from. They never understood its origin or what caused it. And after a while, they began to realize that it may have been the over-sanitization of America. In other words, we became so clean and sanitized about things that it was the cleanliness that caused the problem. That prior to, say 1920 or whatever, this country was filthy. Till the car came along, you had horse shit piled up on the streets. I swear to you, taller than you are. All right? And it stayed there. Nobody was hauling it off except in the hoi polloi areas in which they could hire people to do it. So we had horse crap all over the place. And
They were dumping out their garbage everywhere.
there was
too.
garbage everywhere. There was, and so consequently, there wasn't any polio. So all of a sudden, one day we go on this cleanliness binge. We now have cars. We don't have horse shit. We pick up the garbage every day. We wash our hands. We become sanitary, and all of a sudden, here comes polio. And who was it hitting the most? It was hitting children. And why was it hitting children? Because they were the first generation to come along who weren't filthy. They were being sanitized. And so here was this opportunistic disease called polio, which now attacked people because they were too clean and didn't have any antibodies. And if you think about it that way, isn't that true of just about everything? That if we continually sanitize things, after a while, I want to.
And we're taking it to the next level now with all these hand sanitizers. They're saying that all these people who overdose on these hand sanitizers,
Yeah.
they're getting warts on their hands. Because what are warts? They're viruses that get under the skin.
Well, you remember at Sirius? We had those. Were you there when we had the sanitizing machines?
I was gone. The sanitizing is the last 5-6 years.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, I started.
we have them at work. We have them in my office too.
I started using it because I like the smell, and after a while, I found out my hands were getting
dried out.
They were getting chapped. They were getting itchy. I was getting scabs on them, and it was from using that damn stuff.
I won't go near those sanitizers. It's
I
just
agree.
Well, all those sanitizers could be causing opportunistic diseases to now
Yeah,
attack
yeah.
people.
Exactly.
By the way, I had an interesting item here. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can find it here. It was on. In fact, I wish Damien were still here. 2 people in England have developed. Let me move this over so I can read it here. Well, I can't do that. Okay. 2 people in England have developed tuberculosis after contact with pet cats. The first ever recorded cases of cat-to-human transmission. So, Damien, if you're still listening, get away from those cats. They may have TB.
Wow.
Maybe mine does too. Who knows?
Yeah. But, Mark.
All this talk about dumbing down process. I wonder if it ties into something else. There's been this meme on Facebook about a way how math is being taught now It's a new math that makes absolutely no sense, and it's supposed to teach the kids a better way to do simple subtraction. And it's the same, almost the same result. It's like, what happened to common sense here? And that's the same thing with toys. You had common sense.
Right.
Now it's like we're taking away the ability
Yeah.
for kids to figure it out or to learn common sense, when something as basic as a stupid toy, that's where the logic just goes.
I don't know, what are the toys today, because I haven't I'm not aware of them, because I don't watch kids TV anymore, and that's where they used to advertise them all.
Earlier there was mention of erector sets. Well, erector sets are still around, but now they're all built around radio control capability.
Mm-hmm.
So they've gotten even more technical. Construction toys, very sophisticated ones. I went out, bought a couple for a friend's kid, and it was an eye-opening experience. I was like, wow, this is incredibly non-violent, but very cool. It was like very eye-opening to see stuff like this.
I don't see anything wrong. Again, I turned out completely nonviolent, and I grew up in this age where violence was just, it was entertainment. Of course, there was a difference too. Back then, there was a war going on in Europe. It was a war that was going on by delay. If you wanted to see what happened in Germany this week in the war, you went to your local movie theater and they showed you a newsreel of some people who may have gotten killed 2 weeks ago. So it was it was, how can I put it this way? It was delayed. Where today, they take you right onto the battlefield and show you the battle. And I think that difference has created a whole new difference for us in the way we do these things, and the way we perceive of them. Violence is now far more real than it was back then. Even though you'd see somebody next door had a gold star because their kid died in the war, it didn't drive it home because the kid was in a coffin. But when you see dead bodies lying in the streets of Fallujah, and the freshness of the video is maybe hours ago, I think that changes the perception of violence in this world. We become much more sensitized to it. Patrick?
I have to say that the reality of violence for me was taught mainly by my grandfather to me from his experiences in World War II. Mm-hmm. And, no matter when I played Army or whatever, he would always talk to me at some point when they would come and visit about the realities of war. And so it was always in the back of my mind what was real and what wasn't. And mm-hmm. when the original Gulf War in '91 started, I was in high school, and I was very much in tune to what the reality was, even when we were watching General Schwarzkopf, at the board showing, the missiles, hitting the bridges. And even though it was video game-like, I was taught that there was a person in there. And these are real people dying. So I never, when all of this, what you're describing, where we see the people on the streets of Fallujah and that, I never needed any of that. I was already aware. And the Gold Star, I remember seeing my first Gold Star in the neighborhood where I grew up.
Now, you're how old? You're 38, right? Yeah. And so, what war was that? Because
the Gulf War.
Really? Because I believe, I always remember, I thought the Gold Stars went out with World War II.
No,
they didn't.
Because there are.
By the way, for people who don't know what we're talking about,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
For people who don't know what we're talking about, because Gold Stars were something you put in the window when you had somebody who died, like your son. Usually the parents of somebody who died in a war.
Right.
And, everybody walked past those homes and held a great deal of respect and whatever.
But even now, you've got people that have in their windows the blue stars, which is signified how many kids in their family are in the service. So I still see those around in the Milwaukee area where they're hanging in the window, and it's a red outlined rectangle or square with a blue star in the center of it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if someone deceased, it turned into a gold star.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but I've always lately been very bothered by people who say, "Thank you for your service." It always kind of bothered me because I think if you want to talk about glorifying war, all right, it isn't two kids playing war out in the park somewhere. The glorifying of war is simply saying to somebody, "Thank you for your service," when they were really sent over somewhere to kill somebody. And while I feel sorry that they had to go, because usually it's a case of poverty that made them go in the first place, I really think it's encouraging the bad behavior. Am I an idiot for saying this?
Well, they're all heroes because they went over and did whatever they did. They're heroes. They're American heroes.
They're not. They weren't heroes. They were very
Yeah.
stupid people
there's
who
a difference
thought they could
between
better their
pride.
lives by going over there and joining the military because some recruiter somewhere who cornered them got them to sign on the dotted line. I mean, an eye opener for me was here in New York. Oh boy, we're losing Patrick. He'll call back. What really bothered me was I always went over to Costco for a while until it's now down the block from me, but when it wasn't, there's Patrick again. Welcome back, Patrick.
Thanks.
I would go out to Brooklyn to the Costco there. I'd take a couple of bags and go out to Costco. And there was a train station that I got off at, and one day, not outside the train station, but inside the train station, I see two, it looked like either Marines or Army recruiters, literally two-teaming this kid in the corner, trying to get him to sign on the dotted line to join the service. And I just thought, God, this should be made illegal, for crying out loud. This is terrible what they're doing. They're taking poor innocent kids and they're pressing them into service is really what they're doing. Patrick?
I don't have a problem with them going into a high school, giving a presentation.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There are.
Although I might fight that too, but go ahead anyway.
Well, around me, I would say within, let's say, a 10-mile radius, there at least two recruiting stations. That's good enough to me. If people want to join, there's recruiting stations to go to. I don't mind the high school presentation because I think it's the same as any other job opportunity. They want people to come in and give a presentation. You put some pamphlets on a table and you leave. There's no need to.
What about getting somebody in though who thinks it's a bad idea to join the military, who also can get up and give a speech?
Is there a job opportunity?
Well, I mean, obviously, military is one of a kind job.
Yeah, but
The only thing that comes close to it is mobster.
Yeah, but you know what? That's the parent decision then to explain to the children. I mean, the military is a job. The same as if you want to join, to be a plumber, you want to be a graphic designer, you want to be a radio announcer. It's a job. Mm-hmm. And, you're going to have somebody come in and say, well, you shouldn't be a graphic designer because if you get shit canned, you're going to try to be fucking freelancing for the next year and a half and make jack shit of money. No, you're not going to do that, and I don't think there should be that for
But
the
but
military.
but if you have somebody get up and say, okay, here's why you should join the military, and they tell all these glorious reasons why. Oh, you're going to get a free education when you're through, and you're going to get these bonuses and blah 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 blah. Oh, and by the way, a lot of those things, a lot of military people are now fighting because they didn't get what they were promised. And then they get to leave their pamphlets. Shouldn't there be somebody saying, this guy is lying to you? He's trying to sell you a bill of goods, and here's why, and give the other side of the story so you maybe don't pick up the pamphlets.
But it doesn't always work that way, though. I have a friend who's got a kid who got out of high school. He tried community college. He didn't do well in community college. He didn't know what he wanted to do. He couldn't keep a job. He was at Dunkin' Donuts working. He, couldn't show up on time. What are you going to do with this kid? He decided on his own, you know what? I don't know what else to do besides the military. He went into the military, and it turned him around. Now he's loving life. He's got a great job in the military at this point. He's got a plan for when he gets out because of the kind of education he's getting there. Not to mention that I'm in the DC area, and if you're smart enough when you leave the military, one of the cool things about being in the military are the security clearances you can wind up with, where that's worth a lot of money in this area. Because I do IT work, I'm a network engineer, I'm a senior engineer, and to go to work for the government, to work at the Department of, like DOD, Department of Defense and stuff like that, you have to have polygraph clearances and all kinds of stuff, which there's no way I'm going to be able to get. But they have this advantage that they're going to have a lot of these clearances. So there's advantages to being in the military, too.
Who did we just lose? Oh, we just lost Dan. He'll be back. So you're saying that it's not a bad thing to go into the military because you get these clearances.
I don't like what you're saying about about cornering kids and forcing yourself on them, but I think there's a place for it.
What I'm saying is that kids in an unsupervised atmosphere will believe the adult figure. I mean, this is almost like we talk about child molestation. The adult figure has a certain credibility with kids and a certain power over kids. And so if you're now cornering this kid in a train station in Brooklyn and you're trying to sell him a bill of goods, two of you at the same time, kids that way are somewhat gullible. They're not wise to the world,
But don't get me wrong. I'm not disagreeing with what you said. I'm disagreeing that I don't like that tactic. I agree that that's wrong.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is I don't like that tactic. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. They shouldn't be allowed to double team this kid and do that. It should be an option in life, and there should be no hard pressed sales to get into the military.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've got recruiting station. I think two of them within a 10-mile area of me, and they dropped the pamphlets. I remember when I was in high school, there were the pamphlet stand where they had for the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, and the Coast Guard.
Right.
And every once in a while, there might be a Marine that comes in, and he would stand at a table, and he never really said jack shit to any of us. He was there to answer questions, and
but don't you understand that today,
yeah, what you saw, that's disturbing to me. That would be disturbing if that were two plumbers telling a kid, you really got to get into plumbing because that's the life.
Yeah, but those kids with the plumbers don't have to sign a little piece of paper that then the next thing they know they got bullets whizzing over their head. Rick.
Yeah, to me the bigger problem, and you just started to touch on it, is the fact that we've created an all-volunteer army, and what we do is we take these guys, and we are a lot more free now to start wars because the majority of people are completely unaffected by what we do. When there was a draft, and as much as I hated the draft, I got lucky. I got a high lottery number during Vietnam. But, we now feel free to go in and invade countries and do whatever the hell we want because there's no uproar. As a matter of fact, what was his name? Charlie Ramble had suggested that maybe we should bring back the draft.
And that was one of the few things Charlie Rangel said in recent memory that I totally applauded him for.
Because that's how the Vietnam War ended. There was such massive protest.
When you have a dog in the fight, Okay, you're going to have a completely different perspective. I mean, I think this government learned from the Vietnam War that you don't have a draft. If you have a draft, you have an opposition, because people now are going to be fighting for their lives. And that's what was happening. That's where the whole anti-war movement came from. Do you think there would have been an anti-war movement if that entire war was being done without a draft? Nobody would have cared, because people are very selfish. But when it affected them personally, when they knew they could be drafted at any moment, and what were they going to do, you know, it changed the entire thing. So if they ever want to raise a war again, they better be glad they got drones and a bunch of kids who grew up on Nintendo.
Yeah, and the other thing you talked about, we talked about sanitizing things earlier. We've sanitized wars also. You know, Vietnam, you saw the body count every day. You saw those body bags coming off the planes all the time. It was in people's minds. You saw some nasty pictures in Life magazine, and that's all been taken away.
Yep.
Because who controls the media?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who controls the media? Well, I mean, it is, you know, so it gets back to our original premise. It's interesting how this has been a very good conversation tonight, because it all started with toys and wound up talking about war and about people, you know, whether those days when we were violent and had violent games that we played as kids, I just didn't see as many violent people as a result of it. Prior to, I think, the 60s, you never heard of a serial killer, or one we could name. You know, and the question is, where did that come from?
Well, that also could be a product of the fact that news wasn't sensationalizing that stuff. You didn't have the 24-hour news networks, because I believe that there were serial killers. If you go back and Google it, you'd probably find a list that go back to the 1800s.
Well, it's funny that there have been serial killers, but we never named them as such.
Well, yeah, because there was no media and they didn't put pictures up.
Let me give you
a
a good example. How about a mob hitman? We never called them serial killers. And yet, when you finally saw a debriefing of these people at the end of their lives or whatever, I killed 20, 30 people. But he wasn't a serial killer. He was a mob hitman.
Well, because I think a serial killer is somebody who's a mob hitman is not doing it. It's business. It's just business.
Well, wait. In other words, it's
a ritual.
It's okay if you're organized, but if you're an independent, it's not.
Well, doesn't it take a certain personality
I'm
to become
Italian.
that mob hitman who's willing to go, you know, and maybe wants to go out and kill people?
Yeah. I don't know. I just, you know, it's amazing to me. God, we're down to 5 people. We were up to about 8 or something like that.
You know, you brought up something before, Alex, when you talked about as a kid that you used to play cowboys and, yes, Indians, the way you said that.
Or Injuns.
Here in D.C., you know, there's this whole controversy about the Redskins, right? And the owner of the team, and his name is escaping me at the moment. I can't remember the Redskins team owner. But I heard on the radio this morning that he's been under tremendous pressure to change the name of the Redskins, and he refuses to do it. So now he's trying to fight it in a different way, and what he's doing is he's bringing about awareness of American Indians, and he's trying to spend money to show that he's sensitive to it, and that the game and the name of the Washington Redskins is to glorify the tradition.
He shouldn't even have to be making that excuse. All you say is, this team since when? The 30s?
Right.
Has been called the Redskins. Nobody complained until now. You lost your right to bitch. Okay?
Agreed. I fucking agree with you 100%, Alan. I don't fucking care.
You know, if back then you didn't say to yourself, you know, there's something wrong with calling them Redskins, you know.
Tough shit.
And the tomahawk. What is it? What team does the tomahawk thing? You know,
that's Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, there's another, but that's okay because they're brave. You know,
I don't know. I think they have problems with that too.
And
the Cleveland Indians. That you know, the Indian that's the mascot, in the logo. You know,
caricature.
You know something? I would be very happy because all my life growing up Jewish, I realized that we've been the neglected race. In that, there's never been a team, for instance. Wouldn't it be perfect to have a team called the Brooklyn Jews? You know? And yet we don't have the Brooklyn Jews, which could be, back in the 40s, affectionately referred to as the Brooklyn Kikes. You know? or the Brooklyn Big Noses, or the Brooklyn Cheap Guys. You know, I mean, and somehow if it happened back then, because back then we made fun of each other that way, and it was in the movies and everywhere, and we didn't. It wasn't racism. It was poking fun at racial differences. What are you going to say, Patrick?
Well, I was going to say the Milwaukee Braves. I mean, before they moved to Atlanta, it was the Milwaukee Braves. And nobody had a problem with it. They moved to Atlanta.
Yeah.
The Cleveland Indian, the only thing that changed there is the same as the Milwaukee Braves or the Atlanta Braves, was the face was no longer like a war cry or whatever it was. They toned that down, but aside from that, it's a fucking name.
The St. John's Redmen.
Yep.
What's
The
that?
Red Storm.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of these teams, but I just don't. When that whole thing happened, I went, isn't it a little bit late to be making a big deal out of this? Why wasn't this in bad taste 10 months ago? Or 10 years or 30 years ago? Why didn't somebody raise a gripe then? Oh, well, I guess we just never thought to.
I think that's it. I think it's lack of something to bitch about. So now let's find something to bitch about.
And is it the Native Americans are complaining about this Redskins thing?
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
Why did they pick now?
Nothing else. They got all the money now with the casinos that they run, and they do very well. So they have nothing else to complain about.
So
I
don't know about they do. Yeah, they do well on some of this with that, but to say Indians as a whole or Native Americans as a whole do well is really pushing the envelope.
Well, don't we have a right to complain? I mean, that whole Custer thing,
Well, I mean,
and by the way, I'm tired of them referring to us as round eyes. You know what I'm talking about? No, that's the Japanese. Excuse me.
Let me bring this up. One of the stereotypes that Native Americans tried to get rid of was that they were drunk and gamblers. And yet, what do they own? A number of casinos.
That's right.
So don't hand me this bullshit about your fucking problems with a name on a team. If you want to dispel these problems, then give up your casinos.
That's
right. Isn't that part of what the stereotype was? I mean, who was I can't think of his name, and I'm embarrassed to say it, but the Native American that raised the flag on Iwo Jima.
I'm trying to remember his name, too. I know who you're talking about.
I mean, he died. He was drunk.
Wait a minute, there was a movie made, and it was called The Something of... No, I can't remember.
Flag of Our Fathers is what it was.
Was it Faith of Our Fathers? But I think there was an actual movie made about the
Flag of Our Fathers and Ira Hayes.
No, Ira Hayes. But no, there was a movie called The Story of Ira Hayes back in the 50s.
Johnny Cash sang the song Ira Hayes.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was a guy that he died drunk, but he was a hero of World War II. We've got people bitching about the name of a damn team, yet they're owning casinos, which is part of the stereotype that they kept bitching about for years and years. We're not drunks and gamblers, yet what are they owning?
The problem is, and can I say this, is that they in a lot of ways, they don't own those casinos. No. They're like the fronts for those casinos because they're the only ones who can get them, but the money that's backing them is purely white money.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. But in Milwaukee or in Wisconsin, we've got a big deal going on where they want to open a new casino. And there's 11 tribes in the state that in order for it to happen, they all have to agree. But nobody wants the extra competition. So, it's all... I just think it's all a bunch of smoke getting blown up everybody's ass with these team names, and it's just something to bitch about now.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. Are there any other teams out there that the Cleveland Indians? Huh?
The
Kansas City Chiefs and football.
You know, it's very interesting, isn't it, that so many teams were named after Indians?
Well, this country. I mean, look on Long Island. You've got Wantagh, Massapequa. You know, all these names, these Indian names. It's prevalent.
Wisconsin. Almost every fucking city in Wisconsin
Right.
has an Indian name to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the sports teams took the names, I think, because it conjured up images of fierce, you know, we're fierce competitors and we're going after you.
But it's weird because they lost.
Yeah, well, but they did a good job losing.
Yeah, but I just don't think something like changing the name to like the Cleveland Pussies would you know, really work. Or
Agreed. I know Marquette University in Milwaukee used to be the Warriors forever, and there was a big controversy with the name Warriors, and it had an Indian head, and they capitulated to the outcry, and now I don't even know what the fuck their name is.
Well, Warrior is a name that doesn't necessarily, relate to an Indian.
Unless your logo.
Just call yourselves the Warriors. Well, a warrior's a warrior. It doesn't, it doesn't connote anything.
Depends on the logo, right?
yeah.
Right.
Yep.
How about the Cleveland Custer Killers?
Here's the best sports team name, which is now gone here in D.C. You had the basketball team, who were the Washington Bullets.
Yeah.
And why they changed the name
Originally Baltimore,
because it
yeah.
referred to guns and things like that?
Yeah, it was just a negative connotation.
Oh, my God.
So they changed it.
I mean, come on.
I think they're called the Wizards now, the Washington Wizards.
I'm an old lefty from way back, but, you know, this has got to stop. You know, I don't want to sound like some old fart here saying, look, this is all innocent. Nobody ever, it's the intent behind the action that's important. And I don't think anybody ever called the Washington team the Redskins because they hated Indians.
Right.
In fact, they probably named them the Redskins because they appreciated the fierceness and the warrior abilities of the American Indian and meant it as a tribute.
And that's what Snyder has been saying.
Huh?
And that's what the owner, Snyder, has been saying.
Yeah. And that they're, so what is the intent? And that's what you have to worry about. I've said it before, I'll say it again. You can say fuck you two ways. You can go fuck you, or you can go fuck you.
Yeah.
And it has two entirely different meanings. And the same thing is true of even using like racial epithets. I'll use the one for my people. Kike. If somebody says that to me, you kike, I know he's kidding. If he calls me, you fucking kike, I know he means it to hurt. It's intent, which is important to throw into all of this, and we don't throw intent into it.
Right.
And that's the problem.
Yeah.
We have a few minutes left here. I want to bring something up before we sign off. Anybody hear Revelstoke Jim show last night?
Yes.
Was that not brilliant broadcasting?
Awesome.
Unbelievable.
Huh?
It was a lot of fun.
I mean, I am such a fan of his and of what he does, and I'm jealous of him. Actually, I'm jealous of his talent and his ability and his what he does with that show. And every Wednesday he does these adventures, and last night he went, I don't know, into space. The only thing I would do, Jim, if you're listening to us, is I would love to see you do one with a cliffhanger. You know,
idea.
like all I could imagine last night was the space capsule being taken over by Somali space pirates.
Well,
It's almost creating a serial.
Create a little serial that goes on for weeks and weeks and weeks, or at least a week.
That'd be fun.
But I mean, outside of that, I thought it was brilliant. I just thought it was brilliant. And if people out there aren't listening to him, gee, you really should. He's not on tonight, so you can't just stick around and hear him. But on the nights he's on, you should really listen to what he's doing. And he is getting a nice, decent-sized audience. I know that, and I know that in the replays, I see people really sticking with his shows. But he's on late, and it's a much harder time to get calls and to get a lot of things. But I just think he's He's absolutely brilliant, and I really think the world of him. And I'm so glad he's with us, and I'm jealous of his abilities. You know, you felt the same way, Rob. You wrote me about it today.
Absolutely, and I wrote him about it. I sent him a note, and he responded back. It's just blown away. He's radio gold. I think that's what I said to
No,
you.
he's radio.
gold.
He's radio.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I grew up on. You know, we can go full circle on this deal and go back to when I was a kid and what I did and the things I listened to. And I had this radio. I remember I was 5 years old. I remember my silver tone radio. It was one of those little blocks that used to sit there, you know, and out of it would come this whole world of imagination. And most of it was drama. And if it was comedy, it was sketch comedy on radio. And you imagine what these people look like. In fact, I remember the main thing that would just kind of scare you was when you would finally find out what your favorite radio announcer looked like. And you go, how does that voice come out of that person? You know?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Jim's doing. And I really think it's wonderful. Just imaginary, and he's a real talent. I'm glad he's here. And what you're going to do, Rob, because Rob's doing a good thing now. He's doing a thing called the Rewinds, where on the weekend, starting on like Saturday midday or whatever, we're going to put up these rewinds that are rewinds of the week's shows, the best moments from those shows, which is a lot of work for Rob. And I thank you, Rob. You don't have to do it. We're not paying you.
No.
And the future doesn't look bright that way for me either. But this week he said, why don't we just play that whole show over again? And I said, yeah, just why don't you do one of your openings for it, explaining it, and then go into the show, play the show
Already
for
done.
everybody. And so that's what'll be on this weekend. Hey, listen, I think I probably should start playing a little theme here that we normally. There we go. I hear it now. By the way, I think I figured out why we kept freezing up, why we froze up last night and froze up today on the TV part of the show. And it was simply because I tried to change from the screen to the camera, and that caused the whole program to kind of go wonky. So from here on in, one static shot, no picture of me, except after I say goodbye to you guys. Thanks so much for being with us this evening, guys. I really appreciate it. Good show. And thank you, Charlene. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Rob. And thanks, who else was here? Damien was here, and I'm trying to remember who else was with us. In any event, we'll hopefully see you tomorrow night for our Friday edition. And in the meantime, thank you. And I will say, as I always like to say, if you see her, tell her I love her, okay?